Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining me today for this webinar on getting traction, keeping momentum, the status of your car, your data, your choice campaign. This is, again, a webinar 45 minutes long, so all of our attendees are in listen-in mode only, but we encourage you to use the Q&A tab, so if you want to ask questions, we're going to be answering these questions as we go along. And also stay posted, because later on we're going to have also our guest, Bill Hanvey, the CEO of the Auto Care Association, to join us also to give us a bit of perspective of what's happening in the United States. But before we get going, I would like to obviously take the opportunity to, first of all, acknowledge our sponsors. These are the organizations that continue to provide us the financial means to continue with this campaign. Once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for your contribution and your generosity. I also want to acknowledge the growing list of industry champions. And those are the people that rise to the occasion, have signed our commitment to continue to spread the word and making sure that the campaign is successful. We'll keep adding some logos to this list, but quite frankly, we need more champions. So if you're not on that list today and want to make a difference, please join our list of champions today. So before we get going, we're going to run a quick poll. I'd like to understand a bit who's here and how you're involved in the campaign. So Larissa, if you could go ahead and launch the first poll this morning. Don't be shy. We're going to be sharing those results with you as soon as we complete the poll. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. So it's already that, great, Larissa, if we go and share the results. So glad to see that most of you have signed a petition, but I see some of you have not. So looking forward to have you sign a petition. And I know some of you are not convinced yet, so hopefully the arguments you're going to hear today will convince you. Before I keep forward, we also received some of your questions in advance of this webinar. So the first question I received was, does this issue tie in with right to repair issue? And I guess it does. The right to repair issue is probably central, because we hear it a lot, not just in automotive right now, but consumer electronics and the likes. But I always say this is a bigger issue. It really talks about how we're transitioning to a world of connected cars, which is going to have a great impact on all aspects of mobility, not just how we repair a car. I also, is there a backing or interest from the federal government to assist in this? And the short answer is, yes, there are some people within government who understand the importance of a consumer owning and controlling their data, that understand that the whole privacy aspect of the information in the vehicle and are sensitive to this. But there's also automakers who have a strong lobby who will say that there's no need to, they should be the guardian of the data. And so if our voice is strong, I think our message should carry through, because yes, there are people that in fact understand the issue. I guess more of a statement that insurers and repairers needs to follow proper OEM repair procedures, release them and follow them. No question that our position remains that we need to fix cars right. Hence, having access to the right information in a timely fashion so we can provide for timely repair, cost-effective repair, and proper repair for consumers. No question that the issue of access to vehicle data very much tied into the quality of collision repair as well. And one more is, as a business owner and certified technicians, how can we best assist? And so what you're going to see through this presentation is we really have 3 call to actions for you today. And we're going to go through these right away. Now, I'm going to So the time to act is now. And the reason the time to act is now, and why we're talking about this great campaign, is because within the next 2 years, we believe that up to 95% of all new cars sold in Canada are going to be connected cars. So think about that for a second. All the cars sold in Canada within 2 years are going to be cars that are constantly communicating information in real time directly to car makers. And that's the big debate. This is the big challenge that's in front of us. Because again, if you think about how we've been servicing vehicle, we've been relying on OBD ports, the onboard diagnostic port, since the 80s. So since we've had onboard electronics, we've had these ports that allows us to plug into the vehicle, do the diagnostic, and so on. And pretty basic at first. Since 1996, we've now been using OBD2 ports, and these ports provide us for a greater access because we need to service increasingly more complicated vehicles. But the OBD2 port, so is the OBD1 port, I guess, are things that were fought by car makers. They didn't want necessarily to have this ubiquitous access. So you have to understand that they've not necessarily been supportive of this type of access that was mandated by regulation. But forget about OBD ports. We're now moving into the connected car, the age in which the car transmits the information directly, wirelessly, in real time back to car makers. And that's sort of the combination of always connected and the power of the internet. This is IoT, the Internet of Things we talk about, applied to the cars. And so if you think about currently the largest companies in the world, if you use market capitalization, they're all organizations that are very much focusing on data, managing and harvesting and using the data for their benefit. Now, we all leave these companies, we all use them. I love Amazon, but you recognize that with the growth of control over data, Apple as an example, has made it extremely difficult for you to get your iPhone repaired and service. Same thing if you think about Microsoft, who's moved from a model to selling you software that now you actually have to buy a subscription so they know when, how, and where, by whom their online platforms are used. And Google is just getting on that list. And obviously, Tesla has made a great effort to all control, own, and have ownership of all the data in the vehicle because they know they can monetize that data. And if you're in the repair business of fixing Teslas, you know they're making fixing these cars extremely difficult by using their parts only. And that's probably not something that is going to be good for consumer on the long run. So again, I'm not opposing the connected car. You have to understand that I'm a tech guy who loves technology, but the technology has to be used right. It has to be used in a way that's going to provide for innovation, a competitive marketplace, where basically most people, rather than few, are going to have access to the information. It's all about providing for opportunities. It's all about innovation that ultimately will benefit industries, consumers, and society as a whole. Think about when it comes down to the diagnostic, the servicing, the repair of a connected car. Should it be not the owner of the car or the fleet operator of that car that makes the decision, or not the car maker that make the decision as to where, how, whom, and by whom the car will be serviced? And so there's a challenge that is in front of us. Now, you need to understand that this is really an issue that has been looked at globally. And I would say not just for mobility and the mobility aspect and vehicles. It's all about aspect of data. And so it's not surprising that here too, in Canada, this has been discussed by government. On November 11th, if I remember right, I don't have my note here, but back in November, Minister Bain, which was up until recently the Minister of Industry, tabled in Canada the Bill C-11. So Bill C-11 is the reform of the Privacy Act, PEPEDA, as well as the Digital Charter for Canada. So the Digital Charter is not specific to automotive, but it really is about, as Mr. Bain put it up, empowering Canadians with their data. And so the Digital Charter really is guided by 10 main principles. And those principles, when you look at them, really apply to our sector. But look at number 6, a level playing field. And that's really where we're focusing on, is ensuring that the government of Canada is looking at all of these aspects of Bill C-11, a digital charter, and ensures that that digital charter also applies to the automotive sector. And that's what we need to do. That's what we need to get together to ensure the federal government takes notice and the government of Canada takes action. And this is how we've put a campaign in place starting late November of last year. We've launched a website, and you'll see Kelly will be putting the link to the website in the chat line. We need you to do 3 things: become informed, take the pledge, and sign the petition. Those are the 3 actions. To begin informed, we have a series of information sheet and data sheets and information you can actually view, download, and print to inform yourself, your coworker, your customers, for technicians, explaining the importance of the connected cars, some presentations you can use. We've also created material you can actually print and hand out to your customers again, and your customers. Social media, if you want to do some posts, we also have those with all the graphical elements. We've also designed communication. So if you want to email a group of people about the issue, you can do that. And we are even giving you the key messages to use for that campaign to use. We also, for consumers specifically, if you are speaking to consumer, provided some information to get them to understand the importance of owning and controlling their car data. We also want you to take the pledge. Go to the website and take the pledge, put your name, company, tell us what you're committing to do in order to make people more aware of it, and also sign up to become one of our industry champion. That list is rapidly growing. Thank you again for participating. And if you are a champion, you could even apply to become the recipient of the Canadian Vehicle Data Access and Control Award. So we'll be issuing awards to our best champion as well. But the final goal of all of this, again, to make sure the government takes notice, is to sign a petition. Throughout the website, you will be asked to go to our website on change.org, where you could sign the petition and join the thousands of people who are sending that message to the federal government that they take action to ensure consumer continues to have the right to own and control their data. So that's pretty much the call to action. That's what we need you to do today. Become informed, take the pledge, and sign the petition to ensure that the government of Canada takes notice and that the connected car becomes an important issue as they review Bill C-11 on the revisions of PEPEDA and the Digital Charter for Canada. Now, our campaign is not just a Canadian campaign. This is actually a North American, this is actually a global campaign. Your car, your data, your choice is in fact a joint venture that we have joined with Auto Care Association and the Automotive Aftermarket Supplier Associations, who launched this campaign a couple of years ago. And who's best to join me today to discuss this than the CEO of Auto Care Association, my good friend, Bill Hanvey, who's got the pleasure to be with us today. So Bill, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, JF. Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you today.
Yes. Bill, thank you again for joining us. So maybe for the benefit of everyone, can you give us a bit of a background on how your car, your data came about?
I would be glad to. And, and first of all, I think what you had kicked off with, JF, in terms of a call to action is critical for our entire industry, but not just our industry, but for consumers as well. And that's something that we noticed. JF, you had mentioned earlier on 95% of the cars that are going to be in production beginning in 2025 are going to be telematically equipped. Well, we all like the convenience that this technology brings to us as consumers and to automotive drivers, but 85% of the consumers or vehicle owners are unaware that their vehicles are transmitting that data and that in fact, that access to the data is being threatened by automaker monopolization on this. So what we did, as we began to formulate our strategy in the United States in terms of how we're going to get this access, it was a call to action. And we knew that we needed to have the consumer on our side to educate the consumer. The industry came first, which is what we're doing right now. And so make sure that the industry is aware of the issue, and then broaden that to the consumer, which is where your car, your data, your choice came in. So what's really powerful about your car, your data, your choice is that now we have substantiated proof that this is an issue for the consumer. So the more people that sign that petition, they can go into their local province and tell their elected representative, hey, we have X amount of signatures on this petition, and the politicians and the lawmakers take that seriously. And we took that approach in the U.S. to be able to utilize this campaign as a backup to show that the consumer is interested, and then educate, number one, the industry, number two, the consumer, and just as importantly, number three, the lawmakers. And the lawmakers fall into the realm of the consumers. They're very much unaware when you corner somebody and you begin your spiel on data access. Many times the lawmakers will look at you with a blank look in their eye. Right. And so it's a continual education process, which is why this campaign is so important, to centralize that education, to have one place for your membership to go, to encourage your membership to become engaged in the whole process is critical. And it's just a very nice platform that we can utilize, not only in Canada, but in the United States, maybe Europe, maybe Australia. But the message resonates loud and clear with the consumers, the industry, and the elected officials.
So true, and Bill, that it really is a paradigm shift. And so with ours, just the evolution of the car, but it's so different. And to your point, speaking to many people on the Hill, you realize they're not quite understanding. I guess the same way as we didn't realize the impact of the social medias, of the Netflix and the Amazon 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, Bill, I want to hear, a lot of people heard about Massachusetts. Everyone hear about right to repair, understand that there was a right to repair law that was adopted 2012, I believe, but now you went back to Massachusetts. There was another vote in Massachusetts. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, so, we were talking earlier about some comments about GM and how valuable the data is to the automakers. This data, and not just repair data, is an absolute revenue stream for the automakers for many, many years to come. And what we chose to do in Massachusetts is to tighten the law to ensure that we have access to telematic data that may not be secured through the OBD2 port, that we have equal, and it's only repair and mechanical and prognostic data, right? So let's make that perfectly clear. So we won in Massachusetts by 75% against a $30 million automaker campaign. And for those of you that have seen some of these commercials that were put out, it was a nasty smear campaign on their end, in terms of telling the consumer that they're jeopardizing their privacy, so on and so forth. So that just reinforces how serious this issue is to the automakers. Our intent is very simple. It's very clean. It's let the consumer choose to where they have their vehicle repaired, give them access to the data in real time in a standardized format. So as I mentioned, we were successful in Massachusetts. The very next day, I sent a letter to the head of the Association for Automakers, asking them to come to the table to work out a plan where we can implement the law. Instead, they came back and sued us in court in Massachusetts. So they allege, now let me read this to you, JF, if I have time.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Right. So the automakers are alleging that the Right to Repair Act is preempted by a federal law, including the Clean Air Act. Not true, has nothing to do with the Clean Air Act. That the law would pose a cyber risk. Back to their commercials again. Well, in fact, an open platform is more secure than a closed platform. Failure to protect personal data. We don't want personal data. It's you, automaker, who are selling personal data, not us. It violates their intellectual property, and it does not provide sufficient time for manufacturers to implement. So basically, they threw everything they could against the wall in this lawsuit. And then on January 27th, which I believe is tomorrow, is that right?
That's right.
I'm on COVID calendar.
27 is tomorrow, Bill.
Right. So the 27th is tomorrow, and the Massachusetts. So what I want to make clear is that we are not defending this case. The Massachusetts Attorney General is defending this case. So tomorrow, the judge will decide whether he is going to throw out this lawsuit. We have built a tremendous relationship with the Attorney General office in Massachusetts. We're pretty sure that it's not going to get thrown out, that the judge is going to want to hear the arguments. And quite honestly, this is kind of a very high profile case. So the judge sees an opportunity to elevate his exposure, if you would.
Wow. Bill, $30 million spent by automakers. So obviously for them, owning and controlling the data in the car is key to their future. They understand that. But I'll go further. You and I had the privilege to join you and other industry leaders a couple of years ago in that submission to SAE and the like of ISO, try to build these standards for cyber secure direct access. And I think we all seen that the great work has been done by the aftermarket to demonstrate, yes, you can have a better cybersecure solution that allows for that direct access. I guess similar to building an OBD port that's for the connected car that allows for standardized access. But I guess the automakers don't want any of that.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point, JF, too, because that's really the only way that this is going to work is if we build standards around the way that we're going to operate and access the data. The actual Right to Repair Act is built on 3 standards, which are ISO standards that are recognized by automakers around the world. We're also working with STEN in Europe to develop these standards, but the standards are in place. And now it's just a matter of the OEMs coming off center and saying, okay, look we understand the aftermarket, we need to cooperate, and the voters have spoken.
Yeah, and Bill, your experience is once the automakers are forced by regulations or legislation, this is where eventually they'll get together and find these solutions that works for everybody, I guess. But unless they're forced by regulations, they're not going to do that.
And look, as you well know, Jay, if you were part of those meetings, we tried many, many, many times to meet with the automakers, to put the issues on the table, to demonstrate how we could access that data securely. And quite honestly, we weren't taken seriously. And it's a slow walk, and that's very much their strategy. And so unfortunately, the only way to rectify this is through legislation and good backup to say, hey, look, the consumers have spoken. In Canada, 100,000 people have signed this petition. US, 150,000 people have signed this petition. So that's where that comes in.
Yeah, and again, just a reinforcement for everyone here today that we need to get as many petitions signed as possible. Yeah. I want to give a chance to some of we received some of those questions in advance of this webinar. One was, can we get the OEMs to provide release of some functionalities contained in their scan tool to the aftermarket scan tool provider? Mm-hmm. And I thought that you probably have a better insight on this than I do.
Well, I don't necessarily, but I know where to go, JF. And I actually asked this question of our Vice President of Technology. And from what I understand, the original Right to Repair Act and the MOU that was signed in Massachusetts in 2013 required the same functionality as the OEM tool, as an independent, in the independent side. But what they've done is that they have priced that functionality out of the marketplace so that only dealerships really could afford, you're in an independent shop, you have to buy all makes, all models, whereas a Ford dealer only has to buy the Ford tool. So in effect, what they're trying to do is price us out of the market. They've also done a weight game, especially Mercedes. Mercedes, you can apply for the functionality that's on the OEM tool, and they'll make you wait 1 or 2 months before they grant you access to that particular functionality. We're trying to tie up those loose ends. We work closely with ETI to ensure that we have the same functionality and access with an independent tool as we do for an OEM tool. So great question, and that's something that we always have our eye on.
Yeah, and Bill, I lost my train of thought on that one. Let's move. One more question that was asked also, which was how many OEMs in Canada are under the policies of their USA parents of North American organization? I guess the question is, for us in Canada, I guess many times the decision centers may be in the US, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's an interesting question too, JF. So the way that we approach that is not necessarily from a particular region. And what we're trying to do, and what we did originally with the Right to Repair Act, is to make it detrimental for the car makers to produce a model in Canada that's different from a model that's in the US. We all know manufacturing efficiencies, right? So whether the controlling interest may be in Detroit or in Toronto or in Mississauga, then it's a matter of how can we make this more palatable to the car maker so that they're not producing different vehicles in different regions of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So again, open standards, right? Using the same standards across, making sure the vehicle could cross over. You talked about Scan Tool earlier, and I know a few of our participants in the audience also come on collision repair, and we know the movement has been on sort of pushing the repairers to own and use OEM Scan Tool only, and again, increasing cost of repair for consumers. And we're seeing this differently in collision repair today, where automakers will say you can't be using an aftermarket scan tool because it's just not going to suffice, despite, as you said, the original right to repair that says all that information should be made available into an aftermarket scan tool.
That's correct. Yeah.
I see in the chat line, there was also one quick question. How does that apply to heavy duty? And I know Auto Care is involved a bit with heavy duty in the US, but it's a bit of a different file, or do you think it's the same?
No, it's absolutely the same. As a matter of fact, for the Right to Repair Act that was just passed in Massachusetts, it includes commercial vehicles. And even more importantly is the access to those independent owner operators that own a truck or a fleet of trucks so that they can repair them themselves. So no different. It absolutely will affect heavy duty. Our Right to Repair Act included language that incorporated the heavy duty industry into the provisions of those laws.
So very much all an intertwined, full collective.
Yeah, and it's all about the data, right?
It is. I'll mention one quick thing before we move on, Bill, but we also participate, you and I, on a global right to repair also platform. So we meet with our counterparts around the world. Maybe I'll tempt our good friends in Australia, I think, are doing some great headway also to get recognized, all of their role. I guess for the people in this, people said, how different is Australia? Because often you'll know people Canadians and Australians tend to both Commonwealth, similar population, how are they doing? But there are no automakers manufacturing cars in Australia. I think that's what makes it easier for Australian friends to get a more level playing field, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's an easier sell in Australia, and let's be honest with each other. The automakers have significant PAC funds or political action funds, and and they spend them. So it's whereas in Australia, it's not necessarily an issue. But the automakers and the dealers are very strong in terms of their engagement in their industry, their support of PAC, their support of campaigns like this. So that's where the aftermarket really needs to step up our game.
Absolutely. Again, thank you very much for giving us some backgrounds from the U.S., give a bit of a heads up as to where we are in our fight in the United States. As to your point, very much a global fight to ensure that the consumer continues has the right to access and control their data. And we're so pleased here at AIA to have joined forces with AutoCare as well as AASA on this campaign. So what's next with the new administration and the campaign? I know you're right now from D.C. actually calling me today. So what's new with the new next government, I guess?
Well, we are very much looking forward to new relationships within the Commerce Department, within the Department of Transportation. Obviously, trade and tariff it consumed a tremendous amount of time during the first 2 years of this administration. And it fell on deaf ears in terms of how important our global community is and how reliant upon we are for global sourcing. So we're looking forward to that. As a matter of fact, I just got off a call with a senator in Tennessee at 11:30, and we talked about trade, and that's one of the first things that they're going to look at. And then we feel that the Biden administration would be much more amenable to a data type of legislation, such as what you are looking at in Canada. We think it's a much more friendly environment to be able to do that. So we certainly plan on taking advantage of that.
That's great. Well, Bill, before we wrap up today, we're also going to have a quick poll. So I'm going to ask Larissa if we could run a quick poll, see if we get a bit of a pulse from the people who've attended today.
Great.
We'll see. It's slowly going up. And I know some people have asked in advance if this was going to be made available for playback. So the short answer, yes, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available at a later time for on-demand playback.
Oh, can we view one of these ads by the automakers?
I have one that's cute, but I can't show it today. But we have actually showed some of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
And JF, if you need any of them, then I'd be glad to send them to you.
Yes. Yes. So one of the question again was, can we see the ads that have been used by automakers in the U.S.? And we have shown some of those at one point, and we have them. I'm glad to hear that 80% of people better understand the campaign and its goal at this point. So this is a good, I guess we've done a good job, Bill, of informing the people on the goal of the campaign. So, Bill, I want to, again, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your contributions and allowing us to, again, be part of this great campaign together with you. Looking forward to the opportunity to join you, I guess, face-to-face on a real stage at one point, at post-COVID at one point. But once again, thank you. So for everyone, thank you again for joining today. I hope you found this interesting. Again, 3 actions to complete today. We want you to get informed. I guess this webinar helped, but by visiting our website and downloading some of the information, get further aware and knowledgeable about the issue of access to vehicle data. 2, we want you again to sign the pledge online, and with the pledge again, commit to certain action. Talk to your customers, talks to your employees, talks to your friends, share on social media. It's important, I guess, the role of social media today. And thirdly, but the most important step, sign the petition. Talk to a friend, relatives, coworkers, and customers, and making sure that as many people continue to sign this petition so we could send a strong message to the federal government that we're ensuring that access to vehicle data is part of the Digital Charter of Canada, that Bill C-11 will look specifically at the auto sector, and that we could, again, continue to make sure consumer are right to choose and own their data. So that's it for me today. Thank you very much for joining. And before I let you go, please remember, it's your car, it's your data, it's your choice.
Your choice.